Hello and welcome to the show, and welcome to the Battle of Eylau, 8th of February 1807. This is the attack by 7 Corps. After several rearguard actions, General Bennigsen decided to give battle with Napoleon at Eylau in February 1807. Following an engagement at Hoff on the 6th and a heavy skirmish in the town itself on the 7th, the two armies faced each other across the valley just east of Eylau. Dawn brought light but little warmth. Heavy snowstorms continued throughout the day. Marshal Augereau, ordered to attack the Russian centre in a blizzard, veered off course. Whilst this is a corps attack, I'm using the rules at the divisional level because I think the scenario will work better that way. So Marshal Augereau is effectively the divisional commander, and he has 4 brigades with him, and they're all pretty much infantry, a smattering of horse artillery to be found. For historical accuracy, Brigades 1 and 2 were in one of the divisions with General Desjardins, and 3 and 4 in the other division with General Udelet, but as discussed, I'm not playing it like that. The Russian forces will also be under one general divisional commander, General Essen. They will have 5 infantry brigades, but unfortunately for the French also 4 12-pounder foot batteries, which are large. This is the low ground to the east of Eylau, going across the valley to the high ground where the Russian army is arrayed. Their corps artillery is located here, and the French should be making for the division on the right as we look to the high ground that sticks out towards Eylau. Unfortunately, they've gone awry. Some scenario specifics. Movement is at half speed due to the deep snow. No firing over 20 centimetre range. And on the first turn, no French brigades will be hesitant, but they're not allowed any forwards tasking either. This is Augereau's view from the start line of his corps, looking across the valley east from Eylau up to the hills where the Russians await. But before they start the march, a heavy snow flurry drifts in, which quickly becomes a blizzard. As the French columns march across the valley, they lose their way and veer towards the Russian guns. This could be an absolute disaster. Turn 1, ADC availability. That's 2 for the French and 5 for the Russians. The Russians going heavy with their artillery here. They have their own commander, and I'll give them 2 artillery assaults. Whereas for the French, I'm not allowing any forwards action. There's no hesitancy, so I've not done any brigade taskings at all. So the Russians have 3 hesitant brigades, not that they're going anywhere, but it will affect initiative. Unsurprisingly, the French win that and would be moving first. There are no charges, the distance is still too great, the French can't see the Russians, and vice versa. So the corps will keep plodding on. The Russians will push forward their skirmishers here. And here. And over on their right flank. The lead French brigade voltigeurs sees Jaegers to the left and right, and they will open fire. 6 dice. 4 hits. And that'll be 1 casualty on both skirmish groups. These Russian skirmishers will open fire on the 14th line. 5 dice. That's 3 hits, which is 1 casualty. This small skirmish screen here, 3 dice. 2 hits, 1 casualty. And over on the left as we look, 4 dice. 2 hits, 1 casualty. Now the artillery are outside of range for those columns, but they can actually fire at the skirmishers, which they will do. So it's 12-pounder guns, effective range. They are a large battery, but they're firing at skirmishers. That's no effect. Artillery assault for the next battery. 2 casualties. So they already had 2, so they lose a base. Artillery assault for the next battery. No effect with the inferior battery fire, but they do get 2 more casualties, so that is another base gone. and the final battery on the right. Just one casualty. This doesn't bode well for the columns behind the skirmishers. And that's the end of turn. Russian General Essen on the high ground. He can just about see the columns making their way across the valley. It's not going to be subtle, this. It's going to be artillery assault-tastic for those guns. The rest of the Russians are just going to look on unless they're needed. ADC availability. 2 rerolls for the French. So they have 4 and the Russians have 4. So the French realise they've got to get a move on. 2 brigade rerolls for the front 2 brigades and a forwards. Whereas the Russians have gone for a brigade reroll and 1 artillery assault here. And also a skirmish tasking on the French right. Dreadful rolling from both sides off camera. And it means that the French brigade at the back is hesitant. And the one in the middle is hesitant. Fortunately, the brigade reroll worked for that forward brigade. So they're off for their forwards tasking. But again, the Russians are hesitant on the left as we look there, and on the right, these other 2 brigades here, which won't affect that skirmish tasking, thankfully for them. So initiative with extra dice. 2 lows for either side, and it is a draw, but the French always win draws. So we're into movement because the distance is still too far to declare a charge. So forwards tasking is 2d6 plus 6. So that's 9, added to 9 for the column movement, but it's halved, so it is only 9. Skirmishers will move first. This next brigade is hesitant, so they're not going anywhere. They'll shuffle up a little bit, I guess. And these chaps at the back won't move either. These gutsy voltigeurs at the front of the French columns are going to take on the batteries. 4 dice. Which is 3 hits, 1 casualty. These Russian Jaegers will take on the horse artillery. 4 dice. 1 casualty. 7 dice for these skirmishers on their skirmish tasking. 3 hits, and that's just 1 casualty. They're up to 2, and these other skirmishers to their front, 3 dice. That's another casualty. So now it's artillery fire, and unfortunately for the lead Légère battalion here, they are in canister range. Starting on the left, standard battery fire, canister fire, large battery, column target. 3 casualties and a discipline test. So these Légère are veteran. 5. Ooh, unformed. Rinse, repeat for the next battery. Wow, that's 6 casualties and a discipline test. The Légère are getting hammered. 4. Oh my lordy, they're going to retreat. And I'm afraid for the Légère, where a retreating infantry unit has 6 or more casualties, it will disperse if it is unable to fall back behind a friendly close order unit that is not retreating. So they're gone. So it's a quick switch target for the next battery. On artillery assault, 6 extra casualty dice, still in canister range. 6 casualties and a discipline test. So this French battalion are veteran, but they go right on the column because of 6 casualties. They're okay. But they'll get 1 more canister hit from this gang here. And that is another monster hit. 6 casualties and a discipline test. That was on 6. There's another 6. I think that's it. Standard infantry unit, 12 plus casualties will disperse. Oh my lord. They've gone. So before we get into any effects on the French by that devastating artillery barrage, I'll just do the horse artillery here against the skirmishers. It's weak battery fire because they moved and unlimbered. So it's just 1 casualty dice. And does cause casualty. So there's no great surprise that that front brigade will falter. I think they just about hang in there because the horse artillery is attached to them. Had that not been there, 50% have been lost and I think they'd be off. But at the moment, they're stopped in their tracks. Things are not looking good for the French. ADC availability. It's 4 each, but the French will have to give one to the CNC because of that faltering brigade. Unsurprisingly for the French, they've gone for a brigade reroll with the faltering brigade, and they've gone with a forwards tasking for the brigade behind. The Russians, it's same, brigade reroll for the artillery with an artillery assault and skirmish tasking on the right as we look. For orders compliancy, the rear French brigade has gone hesitant, as have 2 of the Russian brigades to the right of the core artillery as we look and behind them. However, we need to sort out this faltering brigade. They are veterans, so let's see what happens. 3. That is a rally. Okay, so that's good enough. They just become hesitant. Initiative with extra dice. So that's even Stevens, but he goes to the French. Again, there are no charges, so we go to movement. Now, these guys are hesitant. Obviously, they can't go towards the Russians, so I think they can sidle sideways to try and get a bit closer together. So that's half normal movement rate, and I guess it's halved again because of the snow. Not that useful. This brigade with the forwards tasking, 2d6 plus 6, that's 10, plus 9 is 19, so they get a 9.5. The next brigade will plot up their usual 4.5. And of course the brigade at the rear is hesitant, so it doesn't move at all. All they can hear is some horrible things happening to their front, and obviously seeing 2 battalions worth stream past them. Well, I guess the skirmishers are going to shuffle around a little bit. So skirmish firing, French voltigeurs against the Russian artillery. 2 hits, 1 casualty. These Jaegers will fire at the horse artillery again. No effect. This skirmish line here against this battalion. No effect. And these skirmishers here on a skirmish tasking. 7 dice. 1 casualty. Back to the core artillery. Fortunately for the French, this battalion of Légère, 16th Légère, is just outside of canister range. And that's 2 casualties. Unfortunately for the French, this battery is inside canister range and they'll open fire on the Légère. 5 casualties and a discipline test. Rolling on the line column because of the casualties, but they're okay. So the next battery will open fire, also artillery assault. They'll fire at the 14th Regiment battalion over here. It's not in range for canister. And that's just 1 casualty. And the final battery, not artillery assault, but it is canister range, also firing at the 14th line. 4 casualties and a discipline test. Veterans rolling on the line column because of casualties. Oh, no problem there. In fact, they recover a casualty because of that double 6. Nice one. Vive la France. And the horse artillery on the French left flank has rather got bogged down with these skirmishers. It needs to get rid of them so it can get into action against the Russians to their front. Inferior fire. 2 casualties, so the Russians lose a base. There is no combat, so that is the end of the round. French steadied themselves a little bit there. Took a few casualties again in those front battalions, but that next brigade is moving in. ADC availability. All rolling from both sides. 1 reroll for the French. So they have 3 and the Russians 2. French have gone for a brigade reroll and a forwards tasking for that second brigade in line. Brigade reroll for the front. They've got to try and manoeuvre out the way for that second brigade to move through. And the Russians have just got a brigade reroll for the core artillery and a skirmish tasking again on the right as we look. Well, the French are good to go. They're all compliant with orders. They need to push this, otherwise they're going to get mullered up front by the artillery. The Russians are obviously getting nervous that their guns are not going to do the business. We have a hesitant brigade on the right here. And again, behind the guns, they should be the best of them all, but they're hesitant. So the Russians are feeling a bit nervous. I don't know why. Initiative. Definitely with the French. Again, there are no charges. Right, now, what do I do with this lot? I think I'm going to wheel that lot on the right. So they pivot like so. I think those skirmishers just have to drop back a tad. And this lot, when I get them out of the way, I guess they're going to push to their left. I know I moved them last time. I'll push them over there. Brigadier will go and get out of the way. And that leaves a gap in the middle for this brigade to march through on a forwards tasking. Right, 2d6 plus 6. So that's 11. Plus 9, 20. Halved is 10. Before I do that, I'll just move those skirmishers to one side. There they go, trampling over the dead. And the other two brigades will move up. Right, we're on to skirmishers. This lot here with skirmish tasking. 7 dice. 3 hits, 1 casualty. The other skirmish screen here. No effect. And this skirmish screen with the horse artillery, again, no effect. French skirmishers against the guns. No effect. Blizzard must be getting bad. Right, on to artillery. We'll start with the horse artillery here. That's 4 casualties and a discipline test. Well, that gets rid of that base there. They're on 2. I don't know whether they disperse. Yep, they're gone. And the brigade behind falters. Where it's the Russian core artillery opening fire now. And with that oblique movement to their left, they have put themselves in canister range. Dear oh dear. On saving grace is they're not on artillery assault. 3 casualties and a discipline test. Rolling on the line column. They're okay, but look at the casualties. I'll chuck a few down. Next gun is also firing at the Legere. Canister range. 2 casualties and a discipline test. It's a pretty poor roll, but that's taken them up to 12. And we all know what happens when they reach 12. So that front brigade has had it. They've just had too many casualties there and are going to crack and break and run. I'll take these away. They're going to unform them on the way through. They will just run away. Horse artillery will disappear as well. Well, that's one way to get rid of that brigade that's blocking this advance by the 2nd Brigade of the French, but that's a disaster. And those other 2 batteries on the right, as we look, are going to rain down their fire on the 2nd Brigade here. It's not canister range, though. That's the one saving grace. So this battery firing at the 44th line here. 2 casualties. And the other battery will join in doing exactly the same. 3 casualties. And that is the end of turn. Marshal Augereau here. He doesn't know what's going on because of the blizzard, but he's seen a few battalions run past him on the way back from the Russians, so he knows it's not all going well. He might have to get personally involved very shortly. And I think time's running out for the French. They have lost 1 brigade of 4. If they lose 2, that is it. ADC availability. The French have lost 1. So that's 3 for the French and 5 for the Russians. We know what that means. So the French have got to push it here. It's a forwards tasking and a brigade reroll for this front brigade. However, look at the Russians. It's 2 artillery assaults in the core artillery with a reroll. This is going to be the clincher, I think. And look at this from a compliance perspective. The 2 rear brigades are hesitant for the French. I'm not surprised, to be honest. But the Russians are not doing much better. Hesitant over on the right. This lot hiding behind the core artillery, they're hesitant. And we've got to do a roll on the faltering brigade command roll for these chaps. So this lot is the Podolsk Musketeers. They're classified as line. They've lost their skirmish line. And let's see what happens. Ooh, 1 sauvekeeper. All brigade units retreat and they get 4 casualty dice. So back they go. 1. They're okay. And they get 3. So with that brigade retreating, has that opened the door for the French? Initiative. Well, they've got the initiative. We're still not in range for charges, so they will forwards move. 2d6. 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 9 is 21. But that's halved. They're cracking on. Check out the Voltigeurs here. These Russian skirmishers will just swing around there so they can attack this column, and the others there will just close in. Now, error here, unfortunately they were unformed, so they will have to spend their time reforming here and not moving. And the other 2 French brigades are just staying where they are because they're hesitant. So we're into skirmish fire with these Voltigeurs. 5 dice, 3 hits, 1 casualty. This skirmish line here against this battalion. 3 dice, 2 hits, 1 casualty. And the other skirmish line with 5 dice. 3 hits, another casualty. And I'm afraid we're back to the guns again, and it is canister for all batteries. We'll start on the left. That is 5 casualties and a discipline test. This is murderous. Graded as line for the discipline test. They're okay, but this is only going one way. That's another 5 casualties and a discipline test. Well, it's over 12. They're gone. Needn't even bother doing a discipline test there. Away they go. This is absolute carnage. So it's bad news for the 105th Regiment in our sights here, and they are in the guns sights. 2 more batteries firing on them. 4 casualties and a discipline test. Rolling as line. They're unformed. And the final battery opens fire. Well, the Russians have saved their best till last. Look at that. That is absolutely catastrophic. Well, I thought there'd be something there for a double 6, but I don't think there is. However, it is still a disaster. It's 6 casualties and a discipline test. Well, we're not even going to get to the discipline test because that's 12 and they're going to go. So that's it, I'm afraid. This brigade is going to go. They have been dispersed. The previous battalion was dispersed, so they're going to go as well. And that is that. 7th Corps has got absolutely smashed by the Russians there. They lost their way, went up the valley and attacked, foolishly, obviously, the Russian Corps artillery. The 12-pounders, 4 large batteries, and look at the death and destruction there. These last 2 brigades, I don't fancy it, funny old thing. They've seen all their mates run back to their start line and they will follow. So here's old Augereau. He's not happy. He was sick on this day, actually, and he didn't get much involved in the fighting. He had to get literally carried onto his horse. But he's seen his 7th Corps be absolutely mullered by the Russians today, and they will play no further part in the Battle of Eylau. Game over.